Welcome back to It's Your Law. Ed Vopal and I are talking about some major changes that are taking place in the legislature under the auspices of the Republican Party and Governor Walker when it comes to your car insurance and the importance of having an agent that can explain it to you. Let's just start with the and underinsured.
The 2009 changes were called Truth in Auto, and essentially what the changes were made in the policyholders and the consumers in Wisconsin confident that they were getting what they actually purchased. So they were able to access the coverage for which they paid premiums. Specifically in underinsured motorist coverage, the laws made certain things prohibited so that insurance companies could not, number one, reduce coverage that you purchased by other benefits that you received. And that law is going to change. The phrase is called a reducing clause, George, and when you're talking about underinsured motorist coverage, it allows an insurance company to reduce the coverage that you purchased and the coverage for which you paid premiums by other benefits, perhaps workers' compensation benefits or disability benefits, things like that, and specifically for the money that you receive from the at-fault party or the at-fault driver, which means that the insurance company would never pay the full amount for which you purchased coverage. The new law changes, which if they pass the Senate, which will be in effect this year, once again allows insurance companies to write into their policies these reducing clauses, which dramatically affects and undermines the confidence that the Wisconsin consumers are getting the coverage for which they paid the premiums.
Doesn't it take away stacking too?
It takes away stacking. Stacking is a concept where if you have more than one automobile car on your automobile insurance policy, that you would be able to access all of the coverages that you paid premiums for. It's not different than, for instance, life insurance. If you have 5 life insurance policies and you unfortunately pass away, there'd be no argument, and no rational argument anyway, that you wouldn't be able to access all of those policies. What this law does is it takes away the consumer's ability to access the policy limits for each of the vehicles for which they paid the premium. So it does allow the insurance companies to prohibit stacking of policies if there's more than one car on a particular insurance policy.
And Ed, am I correct that it destroys the statutory definition of a phantom driver so that now insurance companies can write their own little description of a phantom driver and not have to pay in case you're forced off the road but there's no contact and you can't find the driver?
Well, there are a couple of things that it does. It puts, with regard to the miss and run or hit and run circumstances, it puts very significant time constraints on when you have to notify the insurance company, and puts a written constraint on the fact that you have to give them written notice within a very short time frame of this accident before you can access the coverage for which you paid. So it's very significant in terms of changing that as well. The other thing that it does is it allows insurance companies to define what is an underinsured motor vehicle. The current law, which is being sought to be repealed by the legislature, has a statutory definition of an underinsured motor vehicle. So essentially your underinsured coverage would sit on top of whatever coverage the at-fault driver had, and the measure of that coverage would be the amount of damages that you incurred. So you would have that money available to you if you had $250,000 worth of medical bills and the other driver had a $50,000 policy, you had $100,000 worth of underinsured motorist coverage, you'd have the full $100,000 available. What the insurance changes do with the legislature right now is it allows insurance companies to define what is an underinsured motor vehicle. And what we saw prior to the 2009 changes were that insurance companies were defining an underinsured motor vehicle by comparing the limits of the at-fault driver with your own limits, and not anything to do with the actual damages that you sustained.
So if you're a consumer, and most of us are, your rights have really taken a hit in all of this legislation. If you're an insurance company, and most of us aren't, your stock just went up greatly. And this was anti-consumer legislation right down the line, and people better go and talk to their insurance agent, who may turn out to be their most important friend, to make sure that they're covered, because the other person's policy isn't likely to do them much good.
Absolutely. The insurance law changes that are proposed now, will likely pass this year, will require Wisconsin consumers to meet with their agent and have a very detailed discussion about what types of insurance they want, what they want to cover, what policy they want, what policy limits they want, and they also have to talk about these things in terms of reducing clauses and the definition of underinsured motor vehicle, to have an open and frank discussion with their agent and get an agreement from the agent that they're actually going to receive, in the event of an unexpected tragedy, the insurance for which they paid their premiums to the company.
And nothing is more disappointing in your office or mine than the folks who come in and they've been in a significant accident. And maybe it's even been partly the fault of somebody in their family. And they say, don't worry, I'm fully insured. Only to find out that maybe they've got $400,000 worth of liability, but no, or not enough underinsured or uninsured, or the reverse can be even more tragic. This means that people really have to sit down and understand what they're buying, because a lot of what they've been paying for is being taken away from them.
Absolutely. One of the things that we see, as you just mentioned, a lot of times is that the consumers will go to their insurance agent and think the most important thing is to protect myself if I injure somebody else. That's liability coverage. And so the insurance agent will sell them a large portion of liability coverage, $250,000. But the second half of the story is probably the most important, which is they have to insure themselves with the uninsured and underinsured coverages. And insurance agents cannot be allowed to sell less coverage to insure the consumer, the person who's actually purchasing it, than they did to protect everybody else in the world. So the consumer really has to be more diligent when they meet with their agent to make sure that they're covered adequately in the event of a tragedy, as you described.
And don't buy insurance on price. You can use the yellow pages, call 5 agents and say, can you sell it to me for less? Of course, you're going to get less insurance. You want somebody who is established, responsible, and going to be there to go through the coverages that you need. It's for protection.
Absolutely. You've got to have this open and frank discussion with your agent and make sure, again, that you fully discuss what your financial circumstances are, what your family needs are, how many drivers that you have. But more important than that, you have to understand or ask them to explain to you, what is a reducing clause? What is the definition in the policy that you're trying to sell me of an underinsured motor vehicle, such that when you get the coverage and in the event of a tragedy, you're getting what you pay for. And the changes, again, that the legislature is proposing is going to be drastically prohibitive for the Wisconsin consumer actually to understand what they're purchasing, short of this in-face meeting and an agreement by the agent to actually cover the insured in the event of a tragedy.
That's why this visit by Ed Vopal was important. We're going to start telling them right today. We're out of time. Keep up the great work. You're working for the consumers in the state of Wisconsin, and I congratulate you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen.